Hello everyone and welcome to the second Trust-wide CPD session on the topic of Oracy. This topic links to two of the objectives referenced in all of our school improvement plans this year, namely improving English outcomes, particularly in writing, and closing the gap for pupils from disadvantaged, under-resourced backgrounds. In the last session, we communicated a simple definition of Oracy. We identified attributes of strong communicators and engaged with the latest research on Oracy. You then completed a task to consider to what extent Oracy is already built into your school curriculum. You identified where the 4 elements of Oracy appear within your year group or subject. Here are just a few examples from that session to jog your memory. From the tables that were submitted, we were able to analyse the common strengths and common areas of development. The strengths are listed here. There's a strong emphasis on performance, public speaking and expression through reading aloud and drama or performing arts activities within our schools. It was also clear that there's an effective use of vocabulary building techniques, such as the explicit teaching of key vocabulary and the use of knowledge organisers and model text. Cognitively, we focused on critical thinking within our schools, and metacognition was clear throughout all of the tables that were submitted. We used strategies like think aloud and think, pair, share. And in terms of the social and emotional aspects of Oracy, our schools foster empathy through emotional expression and collaboration, through peer assessment, talk tasks, and supporting with emotional literacy. For areas to develop, we saw a limited reference to the teaching of the impact of body language and posture during discussion. There was a limited reference to spontaneous sentence construction during conversations, so what is acceptable or expected during conversations amongst pupils, and how pupils build on the ideas of others. There is room for further development in structured problem solving in a wider variety of subjects, and as part of that, how we negotiate, summarise and clarify to ensure that we are actively listening. These aspects can all be developed through well-curated group discussion tasks. So today's session will focus on exploratory talk. This is when pupils collaborate on a task to share ideas, offer opinions and challenge one another. The last session was very much an introductory session to explain why Oracy is an important focus area and identify how the 4 elements of Oracy are already present in your curriculum. This session will be more focused on delivering practical ideas and strategies that you can trial in your classroom. Our objectives are to explore strategies for developing the quality of discussion amongst students using something called the Harkness Tracker, and we'll consider the impact of teacher-student dialogue. The use of the Harkness Tracker was not noted on any of the Oracy tables that were submitted from our schools, so I will talk through this in detail. Harkness is a discussion method where students are encouraged to question and challenge each other's ideas. The tracker itself, shown on the right-hand side on your slide, is a visual record of that conversation. The lines indicate the contributions made, and the key records the nature of the contribution. In terms of setup, pupils will prepare for a discussion. This could be students reading a text, watching a video, or conducting independent research in advance. And that is linked to an open-ended question that they'll then be discussing. Pupils sit in a circle facing each other, could be in small groups or one large class group, and pupils collaboratively discuss the question or questions. The Harkness Tracker is then completed either by a teacher or by one pupil in each group. Let's look at it in more detail. So to use a Harkness tracker, you would draw an oval on a piece of paper and make sure that you had access to the observer's key that you can see at the bottom of the slide. You would write down the initials of each of the people within the discussion around the edge of the oval. From here, you can note down everybody's contribution using the key below. In this situation, LH is instigating a new line of conversation. LS speaks second, and LS asks a clarifying, probing, or challenging question. The next person to speak is GS. GS adds an insight to build on the discussion. You would continue this method until the discussion ends, at which point you'll have a graphic that shows how many times each member of the group has contributed and which type of contribution they are making. This helps to identify the specific skills that your class have, or even where they have gaps. You might notice, for example, that some students are not referring to the text to build on the discussion at all, leading you to consider whether they also lack this in their writing. Could making them more aware of this in their speech also improve their writing? That's one line of investigation you might go down. You might notice that one student's always instigating a new line of conversation, leading you to question whether they're taking others' ideas into account, so do they need support with this? The Harkness tracker can be completed by the teacher during a whole class discussion, but it can also be powerful when completed by one student in small groups. You are now going to have an opportunity to trial the Harkness tracker within a small group. You will be given a short article to read on the topic of scaffolding. Whilst you're reading, please make a note of any key messages, any ideas that you'd like to raise, or any questions that you'd like to ask your colleagues when you have the discussion. You will then come together as a group to discuss the question that is on the slide. Whilst you're having this conversation, one person will track the conversation. I'd suggest that the person who's tracking the conversation does not also take part in the conversation this time. Your in-school facilitator will give you 5 minutes to read the article and make notes. Then you'll have a further 10 to 15 minutes to have the discussion. Pause the recording here. You should now have had the opportunity to really get to grips with the Harkness tracker. Now some time for reflection. What was the nature of your own personal contributions during that session? Which of those roles did you play most of the time? Were you asking clarifying questions? Were you referring to the text most of the time? Were you building consensus? What was your main role? And then what was the most common nature of the contributions within your group, or was it a good mix? If these were the results of your class then, what would you do next? Or what would you do next time you had an opportunity to have a Harkness discussion like this? And how could you use the Harkness tracker in your lessons this month? Pause the video here so that you can have that discussion. We're moving on to our second objective now, to consider the impact of teacher-student dialogue. I want to share some research conducted by the University of Cambridge. The research is video recorded dialogue between teachers and students during Year 6 English, Maths and Science lessons. The recordings focused upon dialogue where teachers are involved, either speaking with the whole class, with small groups, or with individual students. They found that there were 3 aspects of teacher-student dialogue which predicted stronger performance in SATs tests when they occurred in combination. These 3 aspects were elaboration, querying, and student participation. Pupils who had strong skills in elaborating and evaluating, could respond well to challenge, and who were given opportunities to engage with each other's ideas, had higher SATs outcomes. So how can we, as teachers, ensure we are giving pupils opportunities to practice these skills? One way of ensuring that you use language which encourages students to build on their ideas or to provide challenge to a particular idea is to adopt certain sentence stems or apply a bank of questions within your own teaching practice. These sentence stems can then be modelled by yourself or explicitly taught to students before discussions. For our second activity, please draw the 3x3 grid that you see on the slide. In each of the squares, write a question or sentence stem that you could use to prompt students to build on their ideas or to challenge their thinking. For example, can you elaborate on that? How do you know? Or have you considered? Pause the video here to complete the task. How many of your phrases were similar to the phrases listed here? From this selection, pick just 3 that you will aim to use more frequently in your lessons this term. Pause the video here to do this. So what's the impact of a whole school Oracy approach? I'm going to end by asking you to watch a 3-minute video on the impact of Oracy strategies at St Michael's Secondary School. The video highlights the impact on students in terms of their academic achievements, as well as the impact on their wider development.